Hey, you all know what that is. This is Coach Carlos, and we're back at it. This is a brand new year, and you made it. I mean, after all that COVID and kids online learning, and parents don't have internet, and all of that stuff, and out one day, in back day, blended learning, online learning. Whoo, COVID testing. My goodness, at the end of the day, you made it. How about that? How about that? Can we get a hallelujah? Can a brother get an amen? You made it. So let's start with that attitude today as you look at this, as we spend some time together. Let's start with that. Remember, when we get together, my goal is to give you something on Sunday that you can implement on Monday, because when you don't have the stress, then students can do their best. Oh, I think I said something there. That was a rhyme. I think I'm a poet and don't know it. But anyway, let's jump into it. I want to finish this quick, very short series. It's just quick tips. I started off last time I was with you with the one thing philosophy, and I want to finish that up today. So next Sunday, I can give you the one thing. Today is going to be the philosophy. We got to get the philosophy right first. So let me give you the philosophy. We finish up on that today. Be real quick, be done. And you trust me, you can use this tomorrow. I'm giving you quick tips on Sunday that you can implement on Monday, right? Stuff to de-stress so that students can do their best. All right, so let's kind of jump right into this. Just real quick, share, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all the stuff that you got to do. But let's jump right on into this. So, oftentimes we have so many requests coming our way that a feeling of overwhelm makes everything seem urgent. You know how that is. But then we make the mistake that urgency is importance. It's not. Urgency is not importance. There's some priorities that help us build momentum needed for success in all areas. And those priorities are where we should focus our energy. If we put our energy elsewhere, we'll lose sight of our goals, and the unimportant, urgent matters will crowd out priorities, and you don't want that to happen. If instead you focus on your priorities, even by letting some unimportant things go undone, and we got to be masters at that, you can achieve significant goals. If you put the time on those important priorities. When you rescue yourself from the tyranny of the urgent and focus in on the important things, then you got it made this year. So let me give you an example on how small decisions can have big effects. And it's what's called the domino effect. Look it up on YouTube. Do some reading on it. This is powerful. The domino effect is something you cannot let get past you. It was a term popularized. Yeah, that I'm speaking and losing my tongue in 1983 with this physicist, where it turns out that when you knock over a single domino, it has the ability to knock over subsequent dominoes that's 50% larger. I think I got a picture right here. I want you all to see this picture. This picture right here. This gentleman right here lined up small dominoes, 29 in fact. Well, he didn't line up 29, but he used it to prove the fact that knocking over one small domino progressively allows you to knock over larger dominoes. With the first one being as small, he did 29. He took something as small as a 5 millimeter domino the size of a chiclet. Now, it depends on how old you are if you remember what chiclets are. But that's what he did down here, the little chiclet domino. And he lined it up to prove to the fact that if you lined them up in sequence, they can knock over larger dominoes. And he proved that if you line them up 29 in a row, getting larger, that you would have enough dominoes to knock over the Empire State Building. I mean, you want the completion of your one thing because they knock over larger dominoes. But you got to find out what your one thing priority is. You've got to figure that out. You want to take the smallest action right now so that future actions that seem daunting are either easier or perhaps completely unnecessary. But you got to find that small little domino. We keep stressing out over this big stuff. Find the small things. And that's why I'm giving you quick tips, right? So, for example, let's say you're meeting with your parents and the priority is ensuring that they're supporting homework in a timely manner. And there are many things you can do. The first small thing you can do is take a few minutes to research what your homework monitoring process for parents look like. I mean, look at it from their standpoint. Come out of the teacher mode and see what it's like for a parent to monitor homework, particularly if that parent's got 5 kids in your school and 5 different teachers are doing homework different ways. Take a second, find out what that is before you meet with that parent from their viewpoint. That small research done in advance will enable you to be ready for that parent meeting so that things go smoothly. But more importantly, you'll build valuable rapport and credibility with that family and the student. You'll build credibility and relationships with them that you know exactly from the parent standpoint what it feels like. Now, why is that important? It's because when you get that rapport and credibility with the family and students, when the big stuff come up and you got to deal with the lack of communication, performance, or behavior, now you've got relationship and rapport where you can say, look, Mom, your son is tripping in my class. But if you ain't done those little small things, the goal is to knock over that first domino. Remember this? That first little, knock that one over. Now, if you saw this big domino over here knock over something, you blame the big domino. But what I'm saying to you, it's the small things that we do, right? That's the one thing you want to get started. You want to get that small thing started so you can get that chain reaction, right? For increased learning. But first, we must find that first domino, that one thing that changes everything. The one thing. In order to stay focused on our priorities, that one thing helps us throughout the day. We need to get good at asking that question I shared with you all last time, that educational focus question. Now, why do I talk about a question instead of making a statement? It's because questions direct our focus. Your mind doesn't like unanswered questions. So if you ask yourself a question, they direct your focus. They engage our critical thinking. And when we ask our question, our brain's always going to try to answer it. That's what the brain does. Asking better questions allows you to get to the root cause and allow your brain to come up with better answers. But what question should we ask? Now, if you all remember what I said about Mr. Keller in his book, The One Thing, he and his team regularly ask that guiding question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing so makes everything else easier or unnecessary? Get that little rhythm in your bounce when you ask that question. Now, of course, real estate is different from education. I know that. But as I sought to find something for us, the focus question for us, I realized that unlike in business, we in education, us educators, we don't always have control over everything regarding our standards. We don't have that power, to make certain things unnecessary. We don't. However, we do have the power to make learning easier. That's in our power. You can't go to the state, the federal government and say what the standards are, but you can make learning easier and relationships better in your class. Additionally, we can make some disruptive behaviors and their corresponding punishments. We can make them unnecessary. Therefore, I changed Mr. Keller's question to say, I call it my educator's focus question. And if you all were with me last week, the question is, what's the one thing, I changed it for us, what's the one thing I can do for students such that by doing so makes everything else I do with my students easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing? What's the one thing you can do for your students such that by doing so will make other things easier or unnecessary for your students? That's the educator's focus question. Now, I'll close with this. It reminds us, questions remind us that in parenting our own children or in teaching others' children, that there's no free lunch. If you want something from kids, we got to give them something. You want them to work harder. You want them to behave. You got to give up something. It reminds us that if we want peak performers, we cannot have multiple simultaneous priorities. There is only one priority. And the most important thing in that moment is what you've got to focus in on. Remember that little chicklet, little domino. Knock that one over and you'll get the big things like behavior and performance. But you too many of us forget the small domino. So ask yourself that educator's focus question. What's the one thing I can do for my students such that by doing so makes everything else for them and me easier or unnecessary? That's what you want. That's the question you want to ask and get an answer to. Which one of us here couldn't deal with a little less stress? So tomorrow when you walk into your classroom, ask yourself. Ask that educator's question as you start your day. What's the one thing I can do for my students such that by doing so will make everything else for my students easier or unnecessary? The next week, I'm going to give you the answer to this question. You don't want to miss this. You got to share this. You got to tell everybody to be here next week. It ain't going to be rocket science. You're going to be like, oh my goodness. You mean I tuned in for this? Yes. It's going to be a little simple little thing that you can do, right? And I'm going to keep building on that from this point forward. I'm going to keep building on it and giving you little small strategies and tips, right? We got to answer this question. What's the small thing we can do? Not the big stuff. What's the small thing we can do? That's what we want to do to start that chain reaction. That's what you're looking for. Small thing that knocks over the domino so you can start the chain reaction in behavior and also in performance. That's what you want. You want that domino. This is Coach Carlos. Be blessed and powerful.
Coach Carlos. Coach Carlos.